I'd like to welcome everyone out to our budget meeting. We'll get started. Tonight, if we could just discuss the commissioner's goals and objectives of our budget. Open discussion.
You want us to put out our list?
We were asked to bring 3 of our main concerns, and if we can start at either end, or anybody don't have to go in order. The 3 concerns, and I don't know that we're totally limited to 3 if somebody has extra that they want to talk about, but we've been asked to kind of keep it to our 3 main concerns for the budget.
Just the big ones, if you've got more, like,
Yeah.
I know if you got 27, I'm gonna have a hard time.
And that doesn't mean that was kind of a target, but obviously if somebody has,
Yeah,
just to get started.
but just to prioritize them, is what I'd like to do, if it sounds decent, it's like, since there's 7 commissioners, or 6 here now, if you've got 5 or 6, and Commissioner Little does, and so on and so forth, then I'd like to take them and see how many number 1s there are, how many number 2s there are, so we can come up and say, so we can kind of build a budget to address your priorities, if that makes sense.
Here's
The
my
best
final.
you can.
So, Mr. Gatewood, would you like to start on your end?
Sure, I'll start. Thank you very much. Number 1 item on my list is the middle school project. I know we have a budget shortfall, and we'll meet with the school board on Monday and we'll define that amount. But we need to do, as a Board of Commissioners, I believe, whatever it takes to get that middle school project off the ground and completed. Because the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. That's number 1. Number 2 is, during the budgeting process, hopefully we can maintain the current property tax rate as opposed to increasing the tax rate at this point in time. Number 3, we need to catch up on our annual financial audits and do whatever it takes so that we're back in good standings with the local government commission. I'd like to see us proceed with the Axe building project. Design, it needs to be designed, and we need to initiate construction just as soon as possible. It's my understanding we have around $1.5 million in the bank for that project, and it behooves us to move forward with it just as quickly as we can. I'll stop there and let someone else participate. I do have some others.
I'll go next. My first one is a grant writer. I strongly believe that a grant writer would assist Anson County with funding them able to find funding that we're not able to. That's money that's hanging out there. So I would really encourage everybody that we need a grant writer. My second one is the quality of service for mental health population in Anson County. We got Daymark, but after 5 you don't have anything. It's an 800 number that you call, and you might get somebody and you might not get anybody. But we need to, Commissioner Mims and myself was in a Sand Hills meeting last night, and right now they have the money to assist us with a facility, but we can't just expect them to come to the county, buy the land, and build a facility. We got to be offering something up so that, you know, they would want to help us in that. So I think that, and mine personally, because I worked in mental health for 18 years, we need some assistance. We need more assistance, some kind of facility here in Anson County for the mentally ill. And my next one is, I'm gonna piggyback off Commissioner Gatewood, the schools and our teachers. I went out to the schools yesterday, and my grandson told me, "Grandmama, I have a substitute." But then they expect them to pass this EOG, but you don't have a qualified teacher or a certified teacher to help them. So the schools and our teachers should be a high priority on our list. And then I got one. I talked to Commissioner Gatewood about this, but this is just me. I would like to assist Yvonne Burr, the intern at the health department, because she's doing the work as the director. I would like for the board to assist her with finding some kind of money to help her to go through school to get the proper credentials she needs. So that way she can just move up to the director, cause she's been doing the director for the longest. When I worked at the health department, we had Frances Cathay, the, director, but she did the work. And that's with the other director too. She's doing the work, so, you know, I'd like for us to assist her.
I have, excuse me for butting in, but I've had a conversation with her, and the Board of Health, you know, concurs with what you're saying. And I've had a conversation with her just to kind of give her some ideas. The issue that she has is whether she can actually take on, going to school. And, she's been real hesitant about that, and mainly because of her family needs. With one of her children and all. And, matter of fact, after the last, Board of Health meeting, I had a conversation with her just to throw some, because right now I think she, are we live?
Yeah.
Well, I talked with her recently, and she said she's trying to find a school where she can do all of it online. So if she can do that, that would be a plus. But she said she was looking at the UNC Charlotte and another school, and she was gonna get back with me. Now, I don't know
We need
if
to
she
go into
found
closed session
anybody.
about that.
Yeah, that's why I realized why I asked the question.
But support in general, I agree, if we can figure out a way to help make that happen, cause I think we all agree on it, yeah.
But at any rate, like I said, I had a conversation and just kind of gave her some suggestions so that she could explore what it would take for her to, because right now she's like anybody else, you know, you think you want to jump out down or something, but you don't know if you can really handle it, so rather than get started and it not work, you don't do it. And, I just kind of gave her some ideas of how she could actually maybe get started, just to kind of feel it out. And then actually some suggestions on, just some ways to work through it as time went by. And she seemed open to it, and I haven't followed up with her to see if she's gonna do that. But the other thing that and I don't know how much leeway the state would give us, but they have requirements, real strict requirements for
We'll
the,
go in closed session about this when we finish.
when we get through.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just do this closed session.
I got one more and I'm gonna be through.
Okay.
My next one is the money that's being withdrawn from Union County in June. Has it been withdrawn? The money that, you know, for the,
Water bills,
uh-huh.
it's the end of 23, December 23, that 1.3 million ends, right, in revenue?
Actually, you're close, it's, January 24.
Okay.
I was just wondering, was it a concerned citizen was just asking me, how are we gonna go about recouping that money, and what are we gonna do?
Well, if it's okay with the rest of the commissioners,
Sure.
I'll try to address that right now.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Some of your staff, my staff, and I have been negotiating with Marshville, the town of Marshville, because, right now, you may know, we provide them all of their water, and we take half of their sewer. The other half of their sewer, I'm speaking in general terms there, goes west into the Catawba Basin. They're under a court order to, redirect that goes west, so it all comes over to us in the PD Basin. And they're gonna need more water because, right now today in round figures, there's about 900 houses in the town of Marshville. They have several developers that want to build 600 more, but, the only way they can do that is if we connect them, more readily to our facilities, which I'm working on doing. Beyond that, I have also met with the, city manager of Monroe. Monroe's interested in buying, I think, right at 2 million gallons. I think technically they have to buy, they can buy them for 1.9 million gallons. So if we can get that, that'll help replace part of it. And then most recently, our chairman, he tricked me into going to a meeting with the chairman of Union County's commissioners. I won't say he tricked me. It was a very pleasant, very good, productive meeting. Commissioner Calder was there, and we ganged up on them and said what they would like for us to do, not just serve Marshall, but also a good bit of eastern Union County, which is right next to us, and it's more compatible with us. The western side, obviously, and I spoke recently with the town manager and assistant town manager of Indian Trail, and they're tapped out. They're the largest town by population, not Monroe, but of the Indian Trail in Union County, and they can't grow anymore because they have no water and sewer. They said they'd love to depend on us, but they know that's probably an impossibility. But we're working on it. Last week, county attorney and I went to Raleigh to meet with, several staffers from DEQ, Representative Brody, and also we had the Marshall folks there, and it went great. There's monies available for us to tap into, so we'll not have to, I don't think we have to look at anything locally that much, but, so we're working on that. And then we went and met with some of the folks in the governor's office, got their support, and the third meeting was with, our new senator, David Craven, and his support. We made the good use of one day down to Raleigh and back. It was a 10-11-hour trip, but it was good. It was worthwhile.
This could, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there's another consideration as well, and that is, we haven't increased our water rates for several years.
That's on my list too, yes, sir.
It's on my list of priorities, and I just want to mention that because it's time that we seriously consider a rate increase. I think the minimum charge is under $20, Mr. Woodburn. I think maybe 19 in that area.
If you use the minimum amount of water, it's like $14.
$14.
Like 2,000 gallons is, yeah.
$14,
So that's something we really need to consider.
And the rate increase schedule that the state recommended in 2019 is $1.84 a month, for drinking water and 70 a month for wastewater, 70 cents now. So that's the recommendation. That was on a 10-year recommendation starting in 2019, and because of COVID and some other concerns, we didn't go with it. But it's $1.84 and 70 cents a month increase over 10 years. But we don't want to wait 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, and then hit them with a big increase. And I think I mentioned at the meeting a few months ago that the lady in Raleigh specifically told me that one reason why we're not as eligible for grant money, and I'm quoting, is because the state doesn't want to invest in a county that won't invest in itself, and it's based on this rate increase. So, and this is a good time, talking about water, to transition into what Mr. Sossaman said, that we may want to consider redirecting Hazen and Sawyer to study this regional water concept in the $400,000 that they received by grant. Not to spend all of it, but just take that into consideration when we're moving forward with this study that we're doing with Hazen and Sawyer as the engineers that are studying our water system. And I just think all these things are coming together real well. Rate increase, regional concept, we got support from Raleigh, and if we can get the engineers to kind of help direct us in that strategy.
They would love to do that. I've already spoken to them about it, so I'm glad you're addressing it. But if the board gives us blessings, I'll definitely drop that in their lap and get them off and running. Because what the state said we need, going back to your regionalization concept, is they like regionalization, particularly for water and wastewater. And it makes perfect sense because it's easier for them to monitor, and from all kinds of perspectives, environmental as well as monetarily. And so we could put together what I would call a master plan to serve, maybe Commissioner Gatewood would too, since he's been in this seat before, a master plan to serve that part of Union County that we're able to serve, as well as eventually all of Anson County. To have a countywide water system that would spill over. And I've spoken to Scott about it. From a legal perspective, I'd like to see us do it with hopefully with an interlocal agreement concept, as opposed to another entity like a water and sewer authority.
That's right.
That does seem to be the most protected for Anson County at this point. I'm looking at some other issues as well.
Yeah.
But that does seem to be the proper venue, I would suggest. It will protect the county and allow us to still govern regardless of our smaller population.
All right.
Did you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just want to make sure.
One, I guess it's maybe still me. I got one I was going to mention. I think we all agreed at one time that we have to get our building permitting office inspector and assistant. We've got to be ready for the fact that as he gets closer to retirement, it's about a 3 to 5 year time frame for a newly appointed assistant to get to where they're at the level 3 for inspections. And I think we know we've got a lot of development not only coming but already here, and that position was in place 10, 12 years ago, cause Keith was Cooter's assistant, y'all remember? And then when Keith took Cooter's job, nobody backfilled Keith, so I don't know if that funding would still be, I'm sure it's been spread out into other areas, but, if we could get that position back, and then it's not as crucial since we haven't approved zoning yet, and I'm assuming the word yet, but, eventually the tax office is gonna need some kind of a zoning administration person, cause once we get zoning, somebody's gonna have to facilitate it, and I don't think we'd wanna let zoning get in place and then let it not be, I hate to say the word regulated, but the zoning process not be available as far as consultation with the citizens. Somebody's gonna have to be the zoning contact person. I don't know if we don't need that quite as quickly as the permitting office, but we need to know that that's something we're gonna have to have, I think.
Also, I think, and piggyback off of that, we need to look at, like, the environment. The director over there, you know, he resigned, then the assistant resigned. I think it's roughly gonna be about 4 to 6 weeks to get somebody else in to give out permits for set. So we need to look at that too, when key positions that we need for us is key for, inspections, whoever, we need to make sure that we got a plan in to get somebody in if they think they're gonna leave where we can have somebody contracted in to go in that place to where the county's not sitting behind waiting on permits to get stuff done. Everything, I'm piggybacking off everybody else, that's fine. Also, I wanna look at far as water, had several complaints about the areas that doesn't have water, we can't get water. I think I asked Mr. Woodburn a few minutes ago, I think it was some type of 10-year payback. I don't know if that's exactly the calculation, but we can figure out something to, if you run the water for a mile, then possibly there's gonna be other houses there that we can recoup it even faster. But if you just say no outright, then you never have that opportunity to get people water. And even I think some of them have asked, could they pay half the amount? You know, to put the water line in where places they don't have water. So that's there again under the economic development. That's where we're not able to get residents in certain places because there's no water there. And why pay $10,000 to start for a well when we can put them on county water?
And Mr. Salston and I talked about, say the 10-year payback, if you have, say you're in need of 2,500 feet to get where you're going, and the 10-year payback would only pay for 1,700. To me, there ought to be an option where the 10-year payback is fulfilled, but give the landowner the opportunity to finish that out, so that if you can pay back in 10 years all the way up until 100 feet or so, don't tell them no. Just say this is as far as we can go with the potential payback. If you're willing to pay the rest of it, give the landowner or the property owner the option for that. I think that would be something that we talked about.
Well, you're absolutely right. What I have practiced in the past is, particularly with developers, is doing cost sharing.
Right.
And I didn't even use a 10-year payback or anything like that. I didn't know what the cost was, but sort of kind of what you're talking about. And then I've had developers, because the first time I really did this was in Concord, and we ran a line about 2.5 miles outside the city limits because I convinced them to request satellite annexation, which is legal in North Carolina. And the developer paid for half of the cost, the city paid for half of the cost, but then our agreement that was worked out by our attorney was that we would rebate to them parts of the tap-on fees as people tapped on it. Of course, you've got stuff that long, and then that gives you a payback, and they were happy to get that because they knew they were getting money back.
That's right.
And it never failed. So I can work with our attorney, and we can figure that out if that's something the board would like for us to do.
That kind of puts the ball in their court. If they think it's going to develop, they're betting on themselves to develop it. They're going to get their money back. They're just putting money up front.
That's true.
I got a question. When we talk about the formula, the payback, are we just talking about water sales? If you're extending a water line, are you just talking about the money you're going to get back from a water line expansion?
I think that's the way they look at it, yes.
Because I would like to look at it different. Because if we're only collecting $14 a month, we obviously can't afford to run a water line very far. We're not getting a whole lot of money back in 10 years.
Right.
But you got to think about what the people that's going to build that residence at the end of that road, their property tax, what are they providing to the county? Are they you know, living here? Are they gonna work here? Are they starting a business here? What, does all that go into that formula for payback? Let's don't just look at water.
Right.
So, I don't know if we need to examine the policy or that.
I talked to Larry Newton about doing some calculations relative to as it develops, depending on what this, particularly if we got zoning, you know, if it's zoned, for single family, or multifamily, or commercial, and make the assumptions that time you're, in that 10-year time frame, what could we expect from a redevelopment standpoint, creating tax base, because the tax base is where you're gonna get the dollars.
That's right, yeah.
Not solely water.
That's right, so, no.
But also, I don't know when that formula was created, but if it was years ago, luxury house was probably about $45,000 back then. So there again, when you talk about the tax rate, 100 plus, you know, you're giving that'll help you get back your money also. You know.
And in general, we need to look at how we can say yes rather than no. I think is what the main thing we want to figure out. That's with the septics and all too. Is just how do we make it happen and be more approachable and I just think that. Well, I don't want to talk about some of the things I've heard, but I think we just need to look at how do we make this happen versus we can't allow it. You know, I think that's got to be a way to look at it.
And I'll just throw this out there because I agree with everything that's been said. But what monkey wrench just gets thrown into all this thing, and then the problem needs to be looked at is the fact that water and wastewater are enterprise funds.
That's right.
And that's what makes that's the kicker in that. So if we can figure out a way to make that work, then yeah.
That's where I was thinking if the payback that's according to the enterprise regs can't be met, if the landowner would add to it, I think it would meet the enterprise requirement, right? As long as they got the money. And one of the things in the western part of the county where allowing this drinking water will help, if you're looking at eastern Union County where they have a lot of arsenic, the developers that are looking at going in there have to pay between $15,000 and $20,000 for whole house arsenic filters. But if our water tap is right there on 218 and we could run it into Union County with drinking water that's not affected by arsenic, the developer can save $15,000 to $20,000 per home by hooking up to our water. And then as Anson County, as long as we get a retail price back on that, we wouldn't do the wholesale thing like we do with municipalities. We would expect them to be Anson County customers even if they live on the other side of the line. Right. And I think the developers are not looking at the eastern part of the county as much as they would because of that arsenic. And I guess the requirements now are really strict on building in places where arsenic is present in the water. Right. So yeah, so that's another advantage to us having some leverage.
All right, I guess on me. So things I wrote down, and I think the very first key to everything we just talked about, we don't know how much money we got, so we don't know how much money we can give to anybody. If you don't know how much money you got in your pocket, how can I tell you I can promise you some money? So I think the first key is we've got to finish our audits. We got to know what our fund balance is. We got to know where we stand financially. It's key to any business that you're going to operate. The second thing, the infrastructure improvements, water and sewer. I think we need to forge ahead with the Union County deal, whatever we can do there. We need to start looking at our own facilities. I know this regional deal is going to help facilitate upgrading our facilities, which I think that's the biggest perk to it. Not necessarily gaining new customers, it's we're getting our facilities updated through this regional plan. The next thing, education. I'm with Mr. Gatewood. We need to figure out how to get the middle school funded. I consider me and Priscilla kind of late to the dance here on the school board issue with the school, but we need to look at any alternative that we can to make the middle school project happen. I'm not saying we've got to continue with the plan they have now, but we need to find out whatever we got to do to get a middle school in place and under construction. Next thing's public safety, our law enforcement, our EMS, fire service, and I always feel from the fire side, the 911 staff is always neglected in that. I think they need some help at our 911 center as far as dispatchers. I see it on my end from a fire chief that they are neglected as far as help. And so that comes through the sheriff's office, so I wanna work with the sheriff's office to make sure that they're taken care of and have what they need as far as personnel in the 911 staff.
Right.
So,
Sounds good.
On me? Okay. All right, well, I think most of what I had's already been covered, but I'll just, tag off of what, Commissioner Collin mentioned. So that was one of mine, and I put that in the category, it's got public safety, but I put that as a quality of life. Because I think people that wants to live here, that already are here, people that wanna come here, want to be able to feel safe. So we've got to support law enforcement and their needs. Another one that I haven't heard is economic development. I think we need to continue our focus on economic development, make sure that we're funding that as best that we can. And the projects that we got in place, we need to make sure that they happen. You know, we got 2 sewer lines right now, and one's the trigger getting ready to be pulled on, the other one's out there ready to go, but I think it's still about a year away. So, well, sometime later this year. The next one that I had is education also. This already been mentioned, but like we talked about, the middle school, that has to happen. And then also the renovation needed by on the Garibaldi building at SBCC. So those are ones that I had that hadn't been mentioned. And like I said, I'm on board with the others that have.
I just got one more question to ask. I'll piggyback off of mine was the water economic development. Under the lottery money, I know it was a time before we could go back in it again. Is there a chance that have we exceeded that time that we could try to get another advance on lottery money?
Lottery money?
For the school.
Look for the lottery money. We just recently tried to get our second tranche of the ARPA money.
Okay, but I know that the first chunk of money came from the lottery. I'm just wondering, I think it was a time they gave us an advance or something on it.
We'll check that out for you.
Oh, it looks like she's got an answer.
Got one?
And what he's talking about is the grant that they wrote. One of the things that they had to forfeit or to give up was the lottery funds for 5 years.
Okay.
And that 5 years should be upcoming very shortly, which means they'll start receiving lottery funds again.
Okay.
Cause in 2018 was when we got the 3-1, it was 15, they put up 15 million, we put up 5. And that puts us at the 5-year now, from what I understand.
So can we do that again or?
Can we do that again?
Yes.
Well, they just had an opportunity to apply for the grant, it's under a grant.
Okay.
And, it's just been on this grant availability for that.
Yeah. And I agree with Commissioner Little. If there's a way to have grant writing capabilities, I don't know that, and this just be my opinion, I don't know that we could have someone that worked on grants all day, every day. But I think if we had a dual function position, somebody in our finance officer could give us some advice. If there was, say, an assistant in the finance office with grant writing capabilities, and there's not a 40-hour a week, I don't think, grant writing potential, but say, as grants come and go, they help the finance office in between, and have grant writing skills as one of the resume criteria that we would look at for hire. And I'm sure I can't speak for our finance office person, but I'm pretty sure she would take help if she could get it. So
She probably would, and one thing that you don't know is yesterday, on our way back last week from Raleigh, I got an email from state and DEQ, and they are going to start having grant writing training sessions for water infrastructure, which will probably also include sewer.
yeah.
So knowing that, I asked Denise to set up a meeting yesterday with herself and Marina Adams. I had Mike Sessions and Chris Harrington and Ann from their shop. Cause I would like Marina and Ann and Denise to sit through that class. Chris and Mike are welcome if they want to. And actually what we can do at the one that's in Raleigh is gonna be live streamed so we can watch it here. And then that way, hopefully I can cross train several people here to do grant writing for us.
That would be great, though, because there's a lot of money out there.
If there is a lot of money out there. And right now, of course, Central Iowa's doing a lot of work for us, and they've been pretty good at it, but there's probably other opportunities that are there that we need to tap into.
And I spoke with Mr. Luster about this actually today, kind of get thinking about how we approach this in the meeting. He's looking out for us. If he sees grants that we're eligible for in Anson County, he's definitely a great guy to help us, but he doesn't necessarily have a contact person. Like he'll let, if it's maybe my district, might let me know, Commissioner Gatewood, whatever direction, of course the manager. We probably, if we had that position as kind of the hub, you know, as somebody, cause all of us I think love to try to get grant money, but how does he know who to talk to, you know, and that could be a little complicated, and then prioritizing, if we had that person in that position, dual function or however you wanna call it, they may have some guidance on what we want as a board, and then they could, you know, speak for us. Cause I might be looking at a grant that maybe the rest of y'all might not be interested, or you might have one that you're looking at and I don't even know, and cause we all work together, but in reality, we don't talk every day, you know, and there'd be some coordinated position there. But one thing that I think probably the last thing I would say, cause I think this would take priority over everything else we're talking about, is with the 2 audits that are out there, I would say priority number 1 with whatever money that we have, not even knowing what our fund balance is, put whatever we got into getting those 2 audits done and get them done. And that's no offense, you're doing a great job, but we really don't want to lose you, and if you have to do all that by yourself, tell us what you need, because I can't imagine there's anything that we think is more important than getting our finances in order.
All he knows is she and her staff are working hard, and they just about every day she sends information, because she sends stuff to the auditors, and then they'll come back and ask for something different or something in addition to. And I mean, including lawsuits and settlements and so forth, they do that because those won't be a finding that hurts us, but it could be something that they have to reveal because it would have an impact of some type. We had to have a settlement on our financial prowess, if you will.
Do you know what the deadline on the 3-to-1 from 2018 match for the school is?
When I was there, there was no date. It was sort of open-ended.
That's good. It's just hard to believe.
Cause I had asked that question because of the time, you know, I had asked that question and they told us there was no deadline on it.
Okay.
Which surprises
I
me.
wouldn't want to ask that twice.
Yeah, I had it in writing when I was there.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, okay.
Well, I have some other things on my list if no one else.
Before you get into
Yes, sir.
that, just one thing I'll mention as far as the grant writer is concerned, I think long term would be, this position would actually be able to go meet with legislators and places where the money's coming from. So they associate a face with Anson County.
That's right.
And also coordinate with Central Lina
That's yeah,
and
right.
tap into those resources,
Absolutely.
Mr. Woodford.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
Central Line is really good. I've made really close contact with Christina Danis, who's like the Director of Community and Economic Development. And she and I probably talk at least once a week, sometimes more often.
Yes, sir. Good. We have some surplus property that is owned by Anson County government. Specifically, the water department building, the old water department building. There's probably 8 or 10 acres there as well. The old building inspections building. We've got land, and we've got some other buildings. I think we need to identify these buildings and then dispose of them, sell them, and reap the benefits and take that burden off of our taxpayers. Plus, if we don't, those facilities will deteriorate and they'll become another eyesore for Anson County to look at.
And one thing too, if Attorney Forbes could find out what the middle school, if we were to build the new one, what is the status of the old property and the old middle school as far as what we have there?
I'll double check this, but I do believe it remains in the property of the school system. I'll double check that though. I believe it stays under their control, but I'll double check that.
Typically, that's the way it goes unless they, right off the bat, once they get a new facility, return it to the county. But yeah, you're right, that's what I've been familiar with.
That's what I think, so.
But we probably would wanna know, cause if we look at that as collateral or anything that we might need down the road, you know, who has authority over it?
Right.
Yeah,
Certainly.
so,
I'll double check all that, and, I'll give you a report as early as tomorrow afternoon.
no hurry, just,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you very
yeah.
much.
The other one is our county fees, permit fees as an example. We normally pass on those and they haven't been really adjusted in years. We really need to take a close look because inflation is running anywhere from 7 to 9%, and we certainly need to take that burden off of our taxpayers and put it on the users to pay for those services. The gas tank, which is located still at the old water department building, it needs to be relocated to the annex building if there's space available. It's unsafe to have our employees over there at night, even during the day sometimes, filling their tanks. And it's an accident waiting to happen, in my opinion.
A lot of the governmental requirement for county, state, and federal fuel tanks is unreal, so be ready to have to pay a lot of money, cause they have to be triple line, tanks, and they have to have containment. 2,000 gallon tank is somewhere around $60,000 or $70,000, I think. So, and I'm not sure what capacity y'all have, I'm figuring it may be 2,000, but I'm not sure.
I would think it was more than that.
I haven't,
Before that,
I haven't seen it, I'm just,
it would
I'm
take
just.
between 8 to 10,000
So it's,
gallons.
so then you're talking that you can double or triple that 60 and make it 150,000 or whatever, cause the requirements for above ground storage tanks is unreal now, and they're not allowing below ground anymore, so, whatever the capacity.
So I've never asked, but is there not a tank at the annex what did PD use?
They have a very small tank that doesn't have the capacity that
Okay.
we need.
And I guess to get the bulk rate on fuel, I think that after a while it'll pay for itself probably, right? And the convenience of not having to run way off to get the gas.
I would suggest us to move to a credit card for fleet services versus us having our own tank, cause it's just a huge liability and ongoing
That'll work.
maintenance.
I like that.
Okay.
And we
Absolutely.
wouldn't have to spend the money on that. Whenever we get ready to abandon that, we can do what EMS does. And we still get the same rate per gallon that we're currently getting. It's
Well,
just more through a credit card and they go to a pump somewhere. And they'll just use the gas at any gas station.
Well, Ms. Berry, you can tell I'm from the old school.
Yeah.
We certainly need to be pumping gas if we can do it more expediently.
Yeah.
And I think a gas card would certainly serve our citizens and county staff well.
And it keeps them from being isolated in somewhere where there's nobody. There's typically people on major highways and at gas stations and stuff.
Sound like a good idea.
And we'll get ready to do that.
Okay.
It sounds like we could do that before next fiscal year.
Sounds like
We can.
Maybe next month.
I would think that would be an easy transition, I would think.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of managing and getting everybody up to speed, and
Yeah.
then they'll have to manage their own cards and reconcile them and do those type things to make sure that we're keeping an eye on usage and stuff.
And have them keep real good vehicle logs with mileage and everything on them, cause that's the big key. Cause we transitioned from the 2,000 gallon tank in my past life to gas cards, and as long as they keep good logbooks, and then at the end of each term, you divide the mileage by the number of gallons, and if somebody's getting 72 miles to the gallon, then you know they're not filling out their book that well. So, yeah.
Well, my encouragement would be to do it as quickly as we can.
Okay.
Sounds good.
The other one, and this really was number one on my list, and that is a 2.5% cost of living increase for our Anson County staff, both full and part-time.
For upcoming 23-24,
Yes.
And in addition to that, Commissioner Gatewood, I think we'd also need to look at where we can improve benefits as well.
Yes, sir. And one, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mr. Harper. That's the longevity pay plan.
Okay.
We really need to move that maximum payout from $1,600 to $2,000. And the $1,600 was established back in 2009. So it's been a long time, and I'm sure our employees would certainly appreciate it. The other consideration, the last 2 years, and Ms. Cannon, you can probably help us out here, we have delivered a $100 gift card to our staff for Christmas.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And we've done it physically. That's very dangerous. It only takes one mishap and we've lost our money. I think we need to make it part of their paycheck, gross it up so the net comes out to $100. That will simplify things and make it a lot safer for staff having to deal with those physical cards. You're shaking your head, yes, Ms. Cannon?
Yeah, whatever you think. I think, in the long run, they're just happy to get the $100.
Yes. And we need to deliver it safely.
Attorney Forbes? Looks like you're trying to say something.
There may be some tax ramifications that need to be explored on that. I just wanted to bring that out.
Yes. If it's part of the paycheck, it will be taxed. That's why we would gross it up, so the net would be $100 per employee.
So it'd be kind of like a bonus, you know?
We do it every Christmas for the last couple of years.
Okay.
I have a question. Has the audit ever been done by a accounting company outside instead of the finance department?
The way it is done by an independent auditor,
Oh, okay.
but the finance department has to provide, usually, and Holly can help me out here, but lots of times when we send them information, they'll come back and want it put into a spreadsheet fashion. And so converting it from, just receipts or something like that to spreadsheet does take time. And then also because of that, ransomware attack a few years ago, to be brutally honest, it may be that some of the information won't be available. And so that will probably be a finding.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we at with the, I think it was the 21 audit?
That's what's being worked on now, and we had hoped, based on some of our most recent conversations with the independent auditors, that they would have it prepared enough so that we could get a draft of it. We haven't received that draft yet, because we like, Holly would like to get the draft, we can take a look at it, and then see if they can finalize it and present it to you for approval, acceptance, and then we'd have to send it to the LGC.
What about, do we have any estimate on when we'll know our fund balance? Cause that's kind of the number I wanna see.
I think we'll have some kind of semblance of one, if we get this 21 audit done, we'll have that snapshot in time, if you will.
Yeah, I have asked them that as soon as they get the fund balance for 21 to let me know, because I know that is, but we still have another year that has to be considered that, but that would sort of give you an idea. But I was in hopes to have the audit presented on March the 7th. I've yet to receive a draft, which it'll take me a couple weeks to review the draft. And I do not wanna let it come to the board without my review of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody makes errors and stuff. And I think we've had I wasn't here during the time, but I think we had an audit one time that was really, that put us behind a bit before. So hopefully we'll have it to you by March the 7th.
Mm-hmm.
But they're digging and they're working real hard to get it done.
What's the name of the company that's, completing the audit?
Thompson and Price. And once we get our audits caught up, I would like to go out to bid, because we're supposed to go out to bid every so many years for our audit firm. And
Yeah.
they're welcome to, present proposals again, but we will go out to bid hopefully next year for our 24 audit. If we're caught up, as long as we're caught up on everything.
May I didn't want to interrupt you, George.
Go ahead.
May I at this time suggest to the board to consider, a forensic accountant? We've gone several years without an audit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be protective of our finance department to make sure that they're not paying for any mistakes that may have happened or may have occurred by previous department. I think it will protect her as well, but it might answer some questions that some citizens have posed, with not having that. Just to suggest.
In reviewing that too, and I've been studying, trying to learn about it, there's also something called an internal review. It wouldn't be any, there wouldn't be any assumption of wrongdoing, but it's pretty hard for a finance person to be looking at last year's finance, this year's finance, projecting the future, and then also wondering if we missed some hurricane money from 5 years ago or something, and whether it would be a forensic accountant or internal review. I think they're pretty similar, but those were the two things when I was researching it that seemed like a possibility to help find some funding that we may not even be aware that we have. And
My question would be, and I support doing it, but what would be the best time to do it?
I mean, you're talking about involving, I'd be involved in that intensely, because the only way they're gonna get the information is from me. So you're talking about the current audit, plus
I
another
know.
audit, plus all the other audits and all the other compliance information that we have to do on a monthly and weekly basis.
Well,
It's very intense. We're in 2021, 21, 22, now 22, 23. It's time consuming.
can we not hire,
No, you're fine.
can we not hire an independent firm to assist?
But that's what the forensic accountant would be. They would be separate from our regular, and again, you would have to give us guidance on it, because we don't wanna make your job harder.
I do currently have huge, but they don't know everything. I have to provide them with the information. I have to get them copies of everything. You know, they're at the mercy of what I can give them, just like the auditors are. And they've been great and helped me a lot. Right now, they're on a standstill until we can get the audits done. I mean, they've worked on stuff for me the last year too. I've been trying to plan for the 21, 22 audit too. So we've worked on things for 2 years. When we do 1 year, we do the second year. So I do have somebody that I've been using out of Monroe, and they have been wonderful to work with.
Yeah.
So.
I have a question.
Mhm.
How do we get behind?
Good question.
Closed session.
Yeah, that is a good question, but all we can say
This
is,
is not the first time we've been behind.
No, it's not.
No,
Oh, okay.
no. It's not.
but even with just the fact that there was a time frame where we had no finance person, we had the hack, we were already behind with the finance person that we had, that we no longer had. So I wouldn't wanna speculate, not being an accountant, but there's a lot of factors in there that I think with the future, once we get caught up, I know the citizens want us to be on time with this thing, and I think that's gotta be, in a budget meeting, pretty much priority number one, you know?
Long-term stability is very important.
Well, I
I
got a
mean, there was
question.
5 finance officers in a year's time.
Yeah.
You know, there was a new finance system put in place. There was a lot of that going on. Bank reconciliations wasn't done for 18 months. Just a lot of activity that wasn't really, maybe done or wasn't done maybe correctly. And it was just scrubbing everything and going piece by piece with everything, which is a lot of data and a lot of, and then you had the ransomware attack on top of that, which meant they lost a lot of things. Pulling data was very difficult, on top of that, and then you're behind. So it's just a combination of a lot of things.
So how do we prevent that from happening again?
Well, hold on before you go to that. Why don't we get somebody to work on this year's to where you don't have to look far as here and you going backwards, cause then they won't be bothering you, because whatever's going on in 23, the new auditors coming in, the new taxes coming in to assist, they're working on 23 versus what you're doing backwards, cause you're saying it's gonna involve you, it's gonna take up your time to ask all these questions. So if they do their own thing and go with 23 forward, you don't have to work, you just working backwards. So why wouldn't that help?
I don't really understand that.
Okay. For this year here, okay? Because regardless, we still gonna keep being behind. Why don't we get somebody to,
Well, no, we're not behind. We're current with our current, we're within a month of being current as far as posting revenues and everything like that. And the other issue on top of this is us changing systems.
Mm-hmm.
That has really been very difficult for us. We have moved tax collection twice within 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
We just moved them again. And I am trying to work very hard reconciling it and making sure that it balances and the reports balance. Because we've yet to get those reconciled, and we just converted in December. And we converted water this year too. So So you're talking about conversions on top of everything else. And, yeah, it's been it's a lot at one time.
I understand that, but I'm saying 21, 22, you working in there along with the 2021 to finalize the 2021, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm talking about the 22, 23
Mhm.
going forward.
Mhm.
Or we get you some help for that, where you don't have to worry about that. You worry about going back to fix these last 2 years. Wouldn't that help or not?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Let somebody else handle the 22, 23, and you go backwards. And because you're saying you can't be bothered, it's putting a lot on you that if we call somebody in to help you, then it's going to pull you away from the stuff you're currently doing now. So if somebody does what you're currently doing, then we could get caught up on the other one. Would that give you more time to focus?
Yes, it would, but it's again, me training somebody and being there and working with them hand in hand the whole time. Cause somebody's just not gonna come in and pick that up on day one.
I'm talking about a tax firm that can do this.
They're not just gonna come up and pick that up on day one. I mean, I just be honest with you, they just can't. I mean, they can help and assist and stuff, but they're not gonna just come up and pick up and be able to look at budgets and tell me what budget amendments we need to do and what, transactions, what's not posted, what needs to be posted. I'm gonna have to train them on how to do all that.
Somebody has, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm open to anything. I'm on any help I can get.
But
Somebody
tell
has-
us what you need, tell us what you need, how, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying so that everybody hears is, you know, there are suggestions that on the surface that sound good, but you know, going back to Ms. Berry's point is, you know, these people have the capability and know what to do, but they don't know your system. They don't know how you've done it, when you did it, and all that kind of stuff. So somebody's got to show them. I don't care how good they are. Somebody's gonna have to take some time
Familiar with our
with what we're doing, right? Yeah. And that's where, regardless of who does it, whether it's her or somebody else, somebody's gonna be losing time.
Yeah, and just being familiar with departments and how they function and where
Yep.
we're at on projects, that is a lot of pieces. And I was very fortunate that I had some of that experience when I came. I didn't have to pick those pieces up. I was sort of able to come in with a little bit of running in my feet, to sort of work at it. But it's a lot. It's really a lot, especially if you have no experience and if you've not been in this side of it.
Well, that's kind of where the internal review could come in, because it might help, I guess, create a system where everybody's on the same, presenting their data the same way. Because right now you are a forensic accountant, whether you like it or not, and you're searching and you're digging. And so if we bring an accounting firm in and say, here you go, where do they go? I mean, they don't know anybody. They don't know where the files are. If there's some uniformity that you could create, which I'm sure you're doing for all of the departments, so they're all turning the information in the same way. And then we could bring in an auditor if we ever had to, because you could say this is how it all is, and then they could just look at it. But what about the enterprise system? Because eventually, since the utilities are such a huge concern at the moment, I would like to know a little bit about what kind of fund balance they have and how their finances are. And their fund balance has to be different than ours because they have much more potential for a major malfunction. So I guess I'd like to know what their fund balance is as well.
You know the John, we'll know the enterprise funds as well.
Okay, that would be good. Okay. Commissioner Gitlin?
Mr. Chairman, someone asked a question, I think it was Commissioner Little, when did we get behind? Well, let me tell you when we were not behind.
Mm-hmm.
In 2007, Mr. Woodburn, when we were planning for this facility, we were not behind.
Right.
We went to the local government commission, we got a 15-year loan approved with no problem whatsoever. Because during that time, doing the annual financial audit was a top priority. We were expected to begin on time, and if you were late, that was a performance issue. We were not behind in 2014. That's when we got the loan for the Emergency Services Center. I went to the local government commission office in Raleigh with our finance officer at the time. And they pulled out our records, looked them over, asked us a few questions about the plans, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take to get it constructed, etc. And then the question was raised, well, given your finances, have you considered paying cash?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I thought about it, but I don't think my board would approve it. But we got a 15-year loan without any difficulty whatsoever. We got behind, as I recall, after I was county manager, 2017-2018 timeframe. And the pandemic did not help us, and then the virus that we had did not help us.
Yeah.
But once you get behind, it's awful difficult to get caught up. And doing an annual audit is time consuming, lots of work, lots of late hours, and someone's gonna have to get it done. Thank you for asking that question. I didn't mean to be preachy, but sometimes I can.
But at least it lets us know that it's possible.
And also the benefits of being in on time. If you need a loan, if we need the $15 million to support the new middle school project, we could go in and get the loan approved, deliver the money, and do it within a matter of a couple of months.
That's why I said that's the key to the whole county is
Oh, sure.
that fund balance.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And knowing that the middle school may be wanting to talk about some funding, when would the last audit that was due in December be done? Not the one that's over a year behind, but when is the one that's a few months behind estimated to be done?
As soon as we get done with the 21, we will start working on 22.
Okay.
And this is tax season too for all audit groups. So I haven't talked to them. I did send an email. As soon as we get this draft, we need to discuss about 2022 audit.
Okay.
So they haven't responded to that little piece yet, but they know it's my top priority is to start working on that.
Is it within a few months, the 22 audit of the completion of the 21?
It can be. It's just depending on how much time they have to dedicate to it, and then how much time we have and anything that comes up to get the information to them.
Okay, and as far as like bonding and floating bonds and all, we wouldn't be eligible even with one audit being late, right?
I don't know. I would think that we would have to show good faith and show a history of being on time.
It's just good for us.
Before they would allow us to borrow money, but I can't speak for the LGC.
Manager Salzman, I'm sorry. Commissioner.
Well, like I say, we can always check into that once we get to 21 audits submitted to the local government commission, if they like it and they don't gig us, if you will. But then obviously, like Holly said, we want to roll them right into the 22 audit. So it will all depend on the local government commission, because they're like the gods of public sector debt in North Carolina for anybody, schools, colleges, universities, counties, cities. If they say you can't sell bonds, you can't sell bonds.
And I just wanted to preface, there will be findings for our 21 audit. So I don't want that to be a surprise when they present it. There are gonna be findings for the 21 audit. And I'm not sure if they won't be, there may be some for the 22 as well. But they won't be as severe, as massive as the 21.
So,
But there's just some things that I couldn't do after June 30th of 21. You know, I can't do budget amendments. I'll set up the funds and stuff that was required by the new GASB 84, but you had to have a budget amendment. You had to have a budget for it. The transactions are there, but there's no budget because they didn't do that work prior to June 30th, 21. But we had it for 22. So there will be some findings, unfortunately.
is the new program, the IT program, fully compatible? Have you gotten to the point where you're satisfied with the new program?
No. Once we get caught up and we, on time with our audits, I will be looking into changing it to a new finance system.
Because what I was going to suggest is that if we invest in something that makes your life easier, and I'm only speaking for myself, but tell us as soon as you realize that, because whatever it costs, it'll save us in the long run if you have a more functioning way to keep track of the budget.
I would like to see us have a system where we have a whole bunch of different systems and they don't interface with each other. Tax system doesn't interface. Water does, but we're not happy with the current system we have in finance. Our inspections want to go on their own. Register deeds is on their own. Everybody's sort of doing their own thing, and it's just that, and they don't interface with each other. And it would make it a lot easier. Even payroll is separate from our system. Payroll, I have to manually calculate all our postings for payroll every payroll. It does not interface with our system at all. We have recently talked to a new company, but I just don't. Finance can't handle converting payroll over you know, in the next year or so, but we are looking into that.
Cause one of the things that I've heard is that once we've bought something, we have to make it work, and I don't necessarily agree with that, you know, cause, I think we had that thought process, and I'm pretty sure the commission doesn't want you to make something work that's not something that would be compatible, so,
And we're making work what we got, you know,
Yeah.
because that's what we got right now.
yeah.
But we will probably be looking at changing to a new system in the next 2-3 years.
Mr. Chairman, there was another advantage that we had during that 2007 to 2015 timeframe. We dealt with a local CPA firm, J.B. Watson. And if we didn't have information to them on time, they would call the county commissioners and let them know. We would start the budget planning and audit planning with meetings where we identified what we're gonna do, when we're gonna do it, and who's responsible. And that was the first time I'd met Miss Tiffany Randall. I don't know if she was Randall then, but she was a CPA that had graduated from Wingate College, smart as a whip. And they would meet over at DSS and other departments to review their records. They would work with me as county manager, and we had those things in on time. And they helped us. They helped us a lot. And then we started looking for lower cost options. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's when we ran into some problems. We had some ill-qualified people and firm working on our audits, and it did not serve us well at all. But I just want to throw that in. If we could get a local audit firm from Anson County or neighboring county, I think it would behoove us to do it. It would save us a lot of time and headache.
Does sound like a good idea.
Can we go back to J.B. Watson?
They're impeccable, because I was here in 2007, 2008.
But the question is, can we go back to them? Is that an
The
option?
question would be if they want us to, if they be willing to.
I'm not sure I'd
submit a
want us,
proposal.
but-
If they want us back, they may not want us back. But, yeah, I would hope that they.
I would love to have them back if they would take us on. It may cost a little bit more, but it would save us a lot of money and headache on the long run.
Well, I think what I heard a few minutes ago is we've got to put it out for bids. So maybe the county manager, somebody could give them a heads up that we're gonna do that and, just get a feel.
And we'd like to do business with you.
Yep.
Yes.
We would have to bid that out, but we can certainly solicit them to give us a bid, and if they are the, lowest qualified bidder, then they win.
But really, they don't have to be the lowest.
They have to be those, you're right, you're right,
Responsible,
you're right.
qualified bidder.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
that's the official title of it.
I understand, thank you.
Well, and part of the RFQ could be the familiarity with working with us in the past. You know, some of the justification is they're familiar with us and
A lot of times you can use that in your evaluation criteria.
yeah,
Their experience with us and their experience with government.
that's right.
We
We used to have
weed
to
out some of those.
just all source things sometimes like that, but I know we still wanna do the RFQ.
And Commissioner Little and I was in the meeting last night, and it has went up, what, 10%, they said, from last year to this year? You know, it went up 10% from what we were paying for Sand Hill, so it's probably 20% probably from what we were paying from last time we were at J.B. Watson. That's probably what they're looking at the rate.
But you know, the beauty of this story is that county is not in a lot of debt. This facility will be paid off within the next year or two, Holly. The government center will be paid off in full within
It's
the
close,
next.
I have to look at the schedule,
All
but
right,
it's very close.
I think it's within the next year or two.
Yeah.
And we're well down the road with our emergency services center, and making the payments has not been an issue that I know of. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, appreciate all of the, anyone else got? I don't think we can be in too big a hurry in a budget meeting.
I have one small item, and a citizen brought this to my attention. Our welcome to Anson signs need to be repainted.
Mm-hmm.
And we made a commitment, we do it every 10 years, and we're in that 10th year.
And, go ahead.
Could that be part of economic development?
I would say so,
And
yeah.
they pay for that?
Oh, yeah.
Or let them pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Be put to them, I think.
the same signs that were just painted by Ms. Oliver and a couple of assistants?
Those were the Bluebird Welcome to
okay,
Anson
got
County
it.
signs. Those were painted. We have 4 of them in the county still. And they are being repainted.
I got a call about one of the lights being out on the sign coming from Stanley County. So I guess, people notice our signs.
They do.
Sure they do.
And in noticing things, I kind of was trying to see down to 3, but since we're still talking, something that's very concerning is the horrible looking black mold all over the sheriff's office and the courthouse. And I know our maintenance people had tried to work on it and they did put a dent in it, but I don't think we have the capability as a commercial power washing company to come in, especially when you look at that post office side of the sheriff's office in the back of the jail. It's just black with mold, and it's just, and it happens slowly, so that's why we wouldn't notice it, seeing it get worse and worse every day. But if you come into Anson County and you see that, and I've heard a lot of complaints, and then the other thing that I want to mention is I've had some complaints about within the jail, the magistrate's office, and some of the concerns of that lower portion is in pretty rough shape. I don't know an estimate other than there's been a certain amount of concern, and you know, we have late night magistrate female some, and I know we're not supposed to worry particular, but I'm just saying a lady that works in there late at night, I'd like to see some kind of improvements on the locking and the safety and security.
Well, I know they mentioned to me also about cameras, at least she could watch on the outside when somebody's coming up.
That's
I
right.
think they worked on the locks, but I'm not sure about it, maybe about the glass, they want some different glass or something.
The more bulletproof glass. I know it'll cost some money, but that's really important.
Actually, Major Paxson, I spoke a couple days ago, and he's gonna set a meeting up with the sheriff himself and me. And since it's gonna involve the courthouse, and we know their courthouse needs improvements, the jail needs a number of improvements. So I'm looking forward for him to set that up within the next few days.
There's a little bit of an issue with high pressure on older pillars and all, like at the courthouse. So if we got somebody to come in and they'd have to at least be aware of the fact that certain older buildings and the material that were used, when you hit them with some of the new chemicals and high pressure, I hear that people have to kind of know what they're doing, because that's, you know, historical building, so we wouldn't want just anybody to come in if we do decide to move with that.
Right.
So
Well, I would like to comment on DSS. That is the old A&P building. It's been here forever. The side, when you go in, the right side, if you go down that aisle, that hall, the wall is underground.
Sure it is.
It leaks in the ceiling and the mold comes up under the floor. We done had a lot of, and I worked there, so I know this is nothing that somebody told me. A lot of people getting sick because of the mold and mildew. When are they gonna start on that building? I know we're not getting a new one right now, but they were supposed to be doing some kind of renovations to it.
carpet, I think it's 159,000 we approved, right?
Yes, we had a DSS board meeting this afternoon, and Ms. Jackson updated us, and they plan to get started on it next month, okay? So it's a top priority, and they're gonna use those funds. But I'm glad you brought up the DSS building, and I know we have some other priorities like the middle school project, and we also have the AX building to complete, get our audits approved. But once we get back in good standings with the local government commission, we do need to improve our DSS facility. We've got the plan, it's all done, we don't need to, we may have to tweak it a bit. It's not gonna be very expensive to do that. We'll need to identify a new location, because we gave our land on the high school road to the school board for the middle school. So we'll have to identify the property, tweak the plan that we already have, and move on with construction. And it's gonna be probably 4 or 5 years before we complete it. I know that, but we gotta keep it on the priority list.
And I think Mr. Gay would piggyback off of that, then that'd be the thing to ask the school for us to get the old middle school lot whenever the new middle school is built, 'cause at least that's the land there, it could be kind of like a trade-off.
absolutely.
That's
I don't
what
know.
we need to know.
They've got 18, 20 acres out there, it's
Yeah.
flat land for the most part, it would be a beautiful, place for a DSS facility.
Is that something you can check on, Mr. Thompson?
The acreage out there at the high school.
Yeah, the maybe just, if they can revert that land back over to us.
I heard it was 30, something like 30 acres, right?
Is it 30 acres?
That's what I
It's
thought.
way that much.
Pretty sizable piece.
More than enough land for a DSS facility. Hell, we could sell some land, help pay for the building.
Put some cows on it. One thing that's pretty minor, but it really looks bad, is now that we've cleared up that little lot next to the old Bell building and took those trees down, you've got that busted up old deck sitting there just rotting away, and I know that's, I think that may be private property, but what, is there any concern that maybe we would try to figure out how to get that old deck cleaned up? Cause this, now you can see it real good, cause those trees are gone.
It needs to be torn down,
It does.
it's rotted.
That's what I'm talking about, just get it out of there, not,
Get it
not
out.
fix it. but,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And we also need to ground down those, stumps
Mhm.
next to the Belt building, because they're ugly looking as well, right in the center of town.
And you might wanna check with the town of Wadesboro, cause they're planning on doing something with that whole spot, so.
Okay.
But I was thinking, that town, is that town responsibility or uptown Wadesboro?
Absolutely.
Joint it went down, but I think we conveyed all ours to them, and then they were dealing with a, private landowner who had, last little section. I think they have finally got that to where he's ready to let them have it.
Okay, good.
Then they're gonna do whatever it is, they're gonna make that into, I don't remember the plans they had, but they'll be doing something to make that, to convert it from an eyesore to a beautiful site.
But right
But
now,
there again,
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, there again, as far as that stage he's talking about, we might work with them and just get rid of it, because you're right, it doesn't really need to be there now, it's not serving any purpose, it's not in any condition for anybody to use.
And it's dangerous.
Yep.
That's right.
Kids playing, they could get hurt.
Yep.
I think it is in their plans to replace it and get rid of it.
Yeah.
I just don't recall, because Wendell and I have talked about that multiple times, so I think it's on the town's plan to do that.
Part of the problem is when it gets wet in there, and if anybody were to back the truck in now to try to pull that deck out of there and move it, I've seen some mighty big ruts in there before when somebody tries to go in. So that would be maybe one of the concerns.
That would be a drawback. Remember when they did that mural on the side of the Belt building, they had all kinds of problems trying to get in there to get it done.
Anybody else? Does anyone want to entertain a motion to adjourn? So I gotta make a
Second.
motion? Okay, good. Motion made by Commissioner Little to adjourn, second by Commissioner Woodburn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?